a bridge figure or a weak link? We know his father Abraham was a giant, and we know his son Jacob was the father of the 12 tribes. Abraham was an initiator, an innovator, a philosopher, a theologian, a figurehead. And Jacob was a dreamer, a lover, a strategist, a visionary, a catalyst for change. But Isaac was that middle generation between two great men. And Isaac was damaged goods. We know he was passive. Things just happened to him. In his youth, he was dominated by his father, as an adult by his strong-willed wife, Rebekah. Isaac was no fool. With his weak eyes, he saw everything, but he lacked imagination. He was content for others to drive and decide and determine. The question is it enough to make him admirable, being that bridge figure, that middle generation? Certainly, there are attributes there that we should emulate. He wasn't a broken link, just a weak link. He was an essential link in the chain. And he fulfilled his obligations. He had moments of pleasure and pain. As the only child of his parents, he was often lonely, and there were tensions with his half-brother Ishmael. The trauma of the Akedah haunted him his whole life long. And yet he was able to maintain that Jewish life, which was then still just brand new. The finest example of that effort is found in our Torah portion this week, where a detail comes across that Isaac dug up the wells that his father Abraham had once dug. Abraham was the initiator, the one who sought out where the waterways were underground and brought water to the people. And then over time, those wells were stopped up, filled, so they could no longer function. But Isaac maintained the memory of those wells, where they could be found, and not only that, but also what their names were, so that he could reestablish the wells and rename them as they were once known. That is in and of itself a kind of devotion, a kind of determination. There is always this tension in Jewish life between innovation and maintaining tradition. Last week, I attended the biennial convention of the Union for Reform Judaism. 5,000 leaders of Reform congregations gathered to study and to pray together, to exchange ideas, to share best practices, and to take inspiration from one another. I attended one class taught by Rabbi Aaron Pankin, the president of Hebrew Union College, our Reform seminary, with its 4 campuses. And also this class was team taught by Rabbi Michael Marmer of Jerusalem, the provost of Hebrew Union College. And they taught texts about change and tradition. Rabbi Michael Marmer, the son of our own Rabbi Dov Marmer, taught about the rare word for tradition. Today's Jews speak of tradition all the time. Tevye the milkman and the good people of the fictitious town of Anatevka even sang about it. But surprisingly, the Hebrew word for tradition, masoret, only appears once in the entire Hebrew Bible. And this makes it very difficult to understand what is the meaning of this word masoret. Scholars of written texts say that the best way to understand the meaning of a word is to study it in its many contexts and to compare and contrast the usages in the multiple settings in order that a fulsome definition might emerge. But when a word only appears once in a body of work, as does the word masoret, What then? It's called a hapax legomenon. Yes. Without multiple uses, it is impossible to understand the true meaning, the fulsome meaning of this word. It appears, of all places, in the book of Ezekiel, in the 2nd chapter. There's a reference to Masoret Habrit, the something of the covenant, the tradition of the covenant. Rashi teaches that the root of this word, Masoret, means to pass or to transmit. And that's how we use this word, passing on a tradition, transmitting Torah from one generation to the next, as we have this morning with our bat mitzvah. But other commentators say that's not even the root of this word. We don't even really know which are the essential 3 letters of this word. And perhaps the root is Yud Samech Resh, which means to suffer. Masoret Habrit then is the suffering of the covenant. How many among us would say, yes, I know all about that? To be Jewish does come with a measure of suffering. And others say it's more like Musar. Rabbi Satz is teaching a class right now in Musar literature, ethics literature. Others say it's like the word Misirah, which means commitment. But the truth is we don't really know. It's a mystery, this word Masoret. Most Jews like to identify themselves as being traditional. The only question is, which tradition? Reform, Orthodox, even many so-called secular Jews feel themselves beholden to the tradition. Everyone wants to do his or her part, to be that trustworthy middle generation, to maintain the richness of Jewish life, if not to innovate. And some of us dance in and out of tradition, depending on the stage of life, depending on the season of the year. 2 moments that I've noticed in particular when people are drawn towards tradition are at Pesach and during Shiva. People who may not be interested in kashrut for all the other days of the year suddenly are reading labels as they're preparing for Pesach and scrubbing their kitchens down. And at the Seder table, people who might not usually perform ritual, they want it done just so. They want the table laid out just so. And they want the Haggadah songs that they know to be traditional to be sung in their fullest. And also when someone has a loss in the family and is grieving, that's another one of those moments when there's a natural pull toward ritual and tradition. Because when our world is turned upside down, we gravitate towards that which is old and steady and lasting. But of course, Judaism is, on the other hand, the greatest of all adapters. Across millennia and across continents, Jews and Judaism change. If there is one tradition in Jewish life, it is that we change. Languages change, folkways change, even laws change, because ours is, thank God, an interpretive tradition. Even among the so-called ultra-Orthodox, who see themselves as the great gatekeepers of tradition, they too and their brand of Jewish expression also change. This week, when Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the General Assembly of the North American Federations, he made an important statement, which was a kind of a pledge, and we're going to hold him to it, that he will support the reform and conservative movements within Israel. This recognition for the first time of progressive Judaism in Israel, not only in the diaspora, but in Israel, opens the door for the Jewish identity of Israelis today to evolve and to develop on Israeli soil. And that will be, I believe, the next great chapter of Jewish life. There is this dynamism, both in the diaspora and in Israel, this healthy tension between tradition and modernity. And most of us relish in these debates, even when they're hard. Holy Blossom Temple has always been good at this debate, the interplay between innovation, modernity, and maintaining tradition, that which we have inherited. We're always looking for innovation in education, always responding to the new social issues of the day, looking even for innovation in our prayer life to keep it fresh and relevant. And I'd like to spend just a moment or two also describing how this healthy tension is playing out in mortar and brick and in glass and steel as we prepare for our renewal project. Russ Joseph and I, our executive director, and I have spent a lot of time this week at the architects, making sure that the physical plans reflect our core Jewish values, which include both tradition, preserving, restoring, keeping sacred, treasuring, and also, on the other hand, mixing it up and making sure that we don't miss an opportunity for something fresh and new that will excite and speak to the next generation. When this building was built in the 1930s, it was primarily built to be a Beit Tefillah, a house of prayer, with this grand sanctuary. And in the 1960s, there was an addition so that Holy Blossom Temple could also be a Beit Midrash. The school wing was added so that we could show ourselves to be a place of lifelong learning. But every synagogue must be at least three things: a Beit Tefillah, a house of worship; a Beit Midrash, a house of study; and also a Beit Knesset, a house of gathering, a place of meeting, a place of being together with one another, exchanging ideas and sharing our stories. So how do we build for that? How do we make ourselves a Beit Knesset? You've seen the designs, I hope, for the atrium, which will be the central gathering place, or as I like to say, the living room for the congregation. And there will be a cafe, and there will be good music, and there will be comfy chairs, and we'll want to linger with one another. But not only that, there will be a tzedakah center, a place where mitzvah projects can be shared, and we can help one another do good. There will also be a living museum where families can share their family heirlooms and write a sort of museum card to explain what this artifact is, this heirloom from our family line. I know one family has a treasure of a small prayer book that's inscribed by Rabbi Eisendrath, and the grandfather took it with him off to war and came back whole. We also talk about creating an app so that our stories can be heard and every generation can know where we come from. And what's true for a congregation, that we embrace tradition and that we reach for innovation, is also true for each one of us. It must be. How to preserve and maintain and keep what is sacred, and how to simultaneously make our way to something new. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, the psalmist says. Let us sing to God a new song in each and every generation. So the question that springs from this character of Isaac, this middle generation, is how can we be the bridge, at the very least, how can we be the bridge from one generation to the next and not fall down? And more than that, how might we be like Abraham or like Jacob, who were creative and courageous, fearless in their innovation, fearless in facing the future, and paving the way for generations to come. I look forward to the day when we might turn to the text of Hallel, Even ma'asu habonim haita l'rosh pina, the stone that was once set aside by the builders has now become our chief cornerstone. Some will come, what's the expression? When you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. Some are attracted to a beautiful place, which will be accessible and which will be secure and which will be environmentally friendly and will meet all of those criteria. But everyone is attracted to a community that knows how to build together. And that's where we are, the moment of building. Me'et Adonai hayat hazot hi niflat be'einenu. This work of ours is also the work of the eternal, and it is wondrous in our eyes. Ze hayom asa Adonai nagila v'nismechavo. This is the day that God has made. This is the day of our own making. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Amen.